Books Don't Mix with Water, Part 10. Hey, Annabeth. Annabeth didn't even need to turn around to see who had called her. For one, Percy Jackson had a very unique voice, and two, did anyone else call her Wise Girl? No, no one else called her Wise Girl. What do you want, Seaweed Brain? She drawled, with just the hint of a smile on her face. He smiled at her brightly. One of your friends just happened to spill that you've gotten a blue homecoming dress of all things, Percy said proudly. Annabeth rolled her eyes. Of course, Selena squealed all about it, and in front of Percy, of all people. Oh, and when did you hear that? She feigned innocence. Percy, though, was not convinced, but he did play along with it. Oh, I just heard Luke and Selena talking about it. She was very excited, you know, he said nonchalantly. Annabeth sighed and rubbed her temples. Oh, I know, she said dryly. Percy laughed loudly. You knew it was coming when you asked her, right? He said. Annabeth cocked her head to a side and raised an eyebrow. Why else did I bring earplugs? She said. Percy pointed at her with an open mouth. Smart, he commented. Wise, she retorted with a smile, poking fun at his nickname for her. Some random person bumped into her shoulder, causing Annabeth to fall forward because, you know, every random high schooler in the hallways was a sucky person, and she was about to get caught in a cliché. Percy caught her in his arms, lean muscles bulging. And now you've fallen for me, he joked weirdly. Annabeth rolled her eyes at him. Like every other girl here? Nah, she shot back with a smirk. Percy gave her a shy smile. No, not really. I'm just joking. I'm really not that impressive, he said. The blonde looked at the boy in front of her, whom she had just pushed herself off of, and blankly stared at him. Was this kid serious? Was he really saying he wasn't impressive? Annabeth opened her mouth to say something, but then closed it, still trying to figure out what the heck was wrong with the kid. You're really not pulling my leg? She finally asked. Percy gave her a look that said, Yeah? The girl sharply laughed, shocking him. Okay, well, wow, your brain is even more full of seaweed than I thought. How is that even possible? Annabeth said in a less degrading way than one would expect. Percy looked at her strangely. What? Annabeth shook her head with a smile. She really had to explain how Percy was such a sought-after person to Percy himself. Okay, this was not how she was expecting her day to turn out to be. Percy, she began, placing a hand on his shoulder. His head turned sharply and she stared at her hand in a way that she couldn't quite read. Ignoring it, Annabeth continued. You're a talented and famous surfer at age 17. Not only that, your personality, albeit annoying, can be pleasant. Percy's sea-green eyes shined from the compliment. A large grin appeared on his face. Do elaborate, he prodded her. Annabeth rolled her eyes, but did so. You can be quite funny and rather sweet at times, and your loyalty to your friends is like no other. What girl doesn't want the security of knowing her boyfriend won't ever go for someone else? Despite your grades, you've got street smarts, and that's good enough. Want to hear more, Mr. Cocky? Annabeth said with a teasing smile. Percy gaped at her silently, making a smirk grow onto her face. Nope, that's good. Thanks, he started out, rubbing the back of his neck and looking down at his shuffling feet. Annabeth raised a brow. A teasing smile was on her face, and she opened the door to their class as the bell was just about to ring. No way was she going to be late when, in reality, she was just standing outside the door. Coming? She called behind her shoulder. It was a couple of seconds late, but Percy's footsteps started up. His friends immediately gave him a high five when he came through the door. Jason commented that it was the first time he'd actually come to class before the bell rang since, forever. Annabeth smiled to herself softly, knowing that, indeed, she was a good influence on him. Percy on her, though, that was a very different story. Clearly, Jason, Golden Boy, Grace, as Percy liked to call them, knew Annabeth was the reason for the black-haired and green-eyed boy's early appearance, because he shot her a thankful smile from across the room. Annabeth mouthed a, "You're welcome," back. Percy noticed the comment and shot her and Jason a collective look that, to her dismay, she couldn't quite decipher. 5 more minutes, the teacher called, and Annabeth barely minded, though. Her work had been done for quite some time now, and now she was just passing the class with the help of music. Ding! A musical sound cut through the singer's voice, silencing it almost completely. She frowned at her phone and unlocked it to see a message from Luke, of all people. "You have second lunch, right?" he asked. Annabeth replied with a, "Yeah? Why?" She'd always have second lunch, since freshman year. It was a funny thing. Thalia liked to tease her about it. She'd only ever had second lunch. Not first, not third, only second. The only time she'd been graced with first lunch was because some other class had a field trip. "Just wanted to make sure," Luke texted back. "Okay, yeah, weird." Ignoring the confusion, Annabeth turned her music back up to a level 8. Okay, yeah, technically, health-wise, going beyond a 6 was bad, but hey, Annabeth really didn't care. She heard the sound of a head being slammed onto a desk, and with a jolt, she snapped her head up to scan for whomever had been head slammed. Her eyes landed on a groaning Leo Valdez, face still in wood. Jason was looking over him concerningly, and Percy was stifling laughter, but then put a hand on Leo's shoulder blade. His mouth moved, though she couldn't hear what he had said since the music and the fact that they were so far away from her, but she did guess it was somewhere along the lines of, "Bro, you good?" Leo put his head back up and bared his teeth at Percy, who threw his arms up in mock surrender. Again did Leo quip snarkily, or so she thought, with Percy's bubbling laughter as a response. He did softly pat Leo's head, his face softening and mouth moving in words that seemed to be, "You sure?" Leo grumbled and slammed his head back down, this time worrying Percy and Jason immediately. Despite the fact that Valdez wanted to give himself a concussion, Annabeth couldn't help but smile at Percy for being just such a good friend. Yeah, Jason was more parental and all that, but Percy's features literally softened and melted into concern. He was a very caring person. She'd known that since the day that she met him. Even though she was literally yelling at him, he had agreed to her, honestly now, ridiculous demands. Annabeth didn't like Percy the surfer the day she had met him, but now it was safe to say he was a very important person in her life. His random text at 8-something at night kept her from diving too deep into work. He was able to get her to do normal teen stuff, and that, as Luke had said, was a marvelous feat to accomplish. And somehow Percy just made her life better. Not saying it wasn't good before, it wasn't complete. Percy had just gotten into the picture one day and bam, things were falling into place. Finally, the bell rang out, and Annabeth picked up all her belongings and stood up, heading out the door into her study hall period. However, stomping, almost running footsteps from behind her made her pause. "Hey, you missed all my facial expressions," Percy whined like a puppy. Annabeth laughed and patted his head as if he was a puppy. "Relax, I got them," she said with a laugh. Percy's sad expression intense, or more like the dramatization of them were turned up. "Why didn't you make any back then?" he said. Annabeth raised an eyebrow. "That That was a pretty easy question with a very obvious answer. Because that would be dumb, she said. Percy was about to speak when many audible gasps rang throughout the hallway. People began to whisper, and Annabeth finally decided to look up and see what all the commotion was about. And then she saw it. Luke, standing right there in front of her, with a shy smile, flowers, and a sign. Okay, I wanted to do this at lunch, but I just couldn't wait. The blonde senior boy rushed out. I'd already thought of this, but you didn't want to go, so I decided against it. And then you said you would go and got a dress and everything, so I'm giving it my shot. Annabeth, would you go to homecoming with me? Luke asked earnestly. Annabeth dropped her book, which never happened, mind you, and her hands rose to her mouth. Hushed whispers went all around them. Was Luke actually asking her to homecoming, and in front of everyone in school and in this hallway? Oh my God. Yes, Annabeth managed to find her voice, and everyone erupted into a cheer. Luke scooped her up in a giant hug, and everyone was so happy. So happy. Well, everybody but a certain black-haired surfer. But Annabeth didn't even notice the look of pure defeat on his face.